Welcome to Therapy Facts with Dr. Jenn. Today we are talking about point number 3 from the Diddy Cassie video, which is understanding the domestic violence perpetrator. So, we've already talked about domestic violence and how it is typically used in order to control another person and bring them to one's will. We talked about how domestic violence strategies can be subtle, can be things like isolating another person away from family and friends, can be statements made to undermine self-confidence and self-value, all the way up to very overt strategies such as shoving, kicking, hitting, and violating personal space. And so those tactics and strategies are typically used when one adult wants to bring another adult into their control and to their will. And it typically starts off with some grooming and some demonstration of overwhelming attraction, affection, jealousy, and other signs that are construed as love. And so a person may find themselves a victim of domestic violence because of first believing that someone else loves them so much and they're driven to violence or distraction that leads to, again, isolation, name calling, withholding resources, pushing, shoving, etc. And so we talked about that as a result of what we saw in the Diddy Cassie video. And we also talked about how a village of loved ones could help someone who is the victim. And today, as a part of talking, this particular video is going to set up the discussion about how to help the perpetrator. And so when we talk about helping, we first have to understand why it happens. And so you have a perpetrator who is typically someone who feels a lot of self-consciousness and very little self-confidence, and may in fact not be very secure, talking about insecurities, right? Not be very secure with the person that they are. Very often they may have found themselves the victim of neglect and even abuse as a child or an adolescent or even a young adult. Some neglect or abuse that happened earlier on in their lives that leaves them in a place of discontent with the person that they see in the mirror, that leaves them with some disconnection between what they feel inside and who they think they are. And so as a result, they may feel very inadequate and very unprepared to be in a healthy relationship or in a relationship with someone who is desirable in their eyes. And so they use domestic violence tactics and strategies in order to draw that person in, because they don't think that person would be with them or voluntarily be with them in a committed relationship and or stay with them and maybe even be true to them unless those particular strategies are used. And then the next type of certain scenario that's associated with domestic violence perpetrators is that they may have been exposed to domestic violence as, again, a younger person, where they grew up seeing their mother or even their father or some other important adult being the victim of domestic violence, and they think that that is how domestic violence or how relationships go, that relationships have in their at their center someone controlling someone else with aggressive strategies. And so they think that, oh, this is how it's supposed to go. This is important because very often people will be involved in domestic violence situations and they'll say, well, at least they don't harm my kids. And then very often, at least they don't physically harm my kids. And then very often, the reason that a person might decide that they want to make a break from a domestic violence situation is because now the harm is being toward their children, that's being perpetrated toward their children. And they think, oh, I need to get out. Rest assured, your child being able to see you as a part of a domestic violence situation as perpetrator or victim or both, they are being impacted immediately. And even if they're babies and you think, oh, well, they don't know what they're seeing, they certainly understand the panic and the chaos that they're feeling as a result of the situation. And even if your child, if you're in a domestic violence situation and your child never sees you abused or see you as a perpetrator, you never do it to them, or you never do it while they're anywhere present, just know that the energy that comes from being a victim or a perpetrator stays with you. And the very thing you think your children don't know, that you think you're hiding from them, they know. They know. They may not be able to describe it. They may not be able to articulate it, but they're being impacted by it, and the course of their lives will be impacted by this negative experience. So, again, very often children see victimization or perpetration and they think, oh, this is how relationships go. Now, domestic violence perpetrators also can be developed through trying out, trial and error, that maybe a person who has not necessarily been exposed to domestic violence personally, and a person who may not have been treated poorly through neglect, abuse, or bullying, they didn't have that experience. However, in a dating relationship, they may find themselves using domestic violence strategies and seeing, oh, this actually works to get the response that I want. And so just by virtue of perpetration and then a positive outcome, good old positive reinforcement, that a person could come to engage in domestic violence strategies because of the benefits that accrue. And so there are a number of ways that a person could find themselves being a domestic violence perpetrator, as many ways as a person could find themselves being a domestic violence victim. All of which cannot be covered in such a short video. However, the strategies that I noted, or the pathways noted, are typically the most common. And so the interventions for those particular pathways will be associated with the particular pathway.